Ryan with Mast here, and today I'm going to make you a video about my antenna system, kind of show off a little bit what I've done and how mediocre it is and how it still works. The reason I can show you so much about it today is because it took a bit of a beating in a winter storm that we had just earlier this week. Actually, I guess that was last week by now. We had about 30 or 40 mile an hour winds, and it became tangled. Actually, it blew over so much that it tangled with the electrical feed to my house, which I didn't want. And when I tried to untangle it without taking it down, it broke. Just the wire. The antenna wire that I use is recovered Ethernet cable, and I just kind of twist the ends together, fold them over, and hope for the best. It generally works. Probably a couple times a year it comes down and I gotta fix it. And then that gives me a chance to experiment with moving it around a bit and trying different configurations, which I'm going to do a little bit of today. So at first I thought I would start by showing you the arrangement, and you'll have to ignore my horrific yard work. Things tend to grow rather quickly around here, and I tend to take care of them rather slowly. I'm a ham, not a gardener. Anyway, I hate yard work. There, you heard it here first, kids. Anyway, so let me show you what I've got. Now, the first thing I want to show you is the eBay antenna pole that I wrote about on my blog. I guess it's been a couple years ago. I've done a couple videos about it too. I'll link to them below. By the way, make sure you subscribe, like, all that garbage, if this is your kind of thing. And anyway, I bought this antenna pole on eBay for about $10 about 2 or 3 years ago, I think. And it's still serving me well, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. So here's the eBay antenna pole. It's about 15.5 feet long, although they're advertised as being 7.2 meters. They aren't. I'm not sure how they come up with that measurement. But, and that last bit here is pretty wobbly. So you really can't use any of this. It's there, but it's there we go. But it's not useful. You can't put an antenna on that. So what I've done is I've used a couple of zip ties to make a small loop, if I can get it to focus. And that little loop has the wire going through it. This is not recovered wire, by the way. This is from a spool of 100 feet of 24 gauge wire I bought on Amazon a couple years ago. Used it for various projects, including this. And I've got my little QRP L-match, Homebrew there. Homebrew QRP L-match, I should say. And that goes down to a coil for some it's a common mode coil. And I've got a coupler there going to about 50 feet of RG8X, which I bought on Amazon. And that's been out here for also a couple years. It's working great. It's held up real well. And it does get rained on, it does get sun in the part that goes around the other side of the building. Anyway, and it's got just about 15 or 17 feet of counterpoise strung along there on the ground. Holding up this is this old camera tripod. And that camera tripod is held down with a gallon of water zip tied to it, and that actually has worked really well. The only time it's ever fallen down is when the gallon of water, the zip tie rotted and it fell off. So I fixed that and everything's happy. So and the end of the antenna just slips over the rod that pops out of the top of the tripod, which is where the camera previously mounted, but that actually broke, and so I just took it off and repurposed it for this. So next I'll show you what I've got going on and what I'm going to do. Alright, so lashed to my fence post here, I've got the 10 meter, 33 foot jackkite kite pole. And I'm using the same arrangement at the top for with a zip tie to hold the antenna wire, because it goes a little too small to go through that little eyelet at the top. And yes, it's metal at the top, no big deal, doesn't hurt anything. And I'm just using some eyelets screwed into the fence post here and a bunch of zip ties. And you can see I've got a zip tie up here that when it's extended actually holds it close to the fence post so it doesn't flop around in the wind. Otherwise it certainly will. And yes, there's a spare zip tie built in so that when it breaks I can just throw another one on there. And then that was going down to the end of the yard over here where I've got some yard scraps I need to take away. And it was just kind of terminating toward the corner. Unfortunately, it caught on the right behind that dish there, right there. It was actually caught on the feed that goes into the house, or that goes into that electrical panel. So when I tried to take it down, it broke. It actually broke behind me over there. And so actually the wire broke toward the top of the antenna over there, so I had to go offline for a few days until I could get some time to put it back together. So my goal today is to mitigate this by making my antenna more secure on the far end of the fence line over here. And to do that, I'm going to use an arrangement that I came up with probably a couple years ago. And that's with these eyelets here and this eyelet here, and these are for this thing. Yes, this 1/2-inch piece of conduit. However, I'm not going to use the full length of it because that would be just way too tall, because at the end of this piece of conduit I have stuck on it an old fishing rod, which I got for $1 at a flea market. And this fishing rod is about 7 feet long, 7 or 8 feet, and it's got a little eyelet at the end there that I left, and that will be used to keep the antenna. It's kind of, I think the actual eyelet broke off there. That's okay. There we go. So I can run the antenna wire through that, and yes, it's metal. It's really not that big of a deal. If I really was worried about it, I could throw a zip tie on it. Maybe I'll do that. But that does come apart here. There we go. That comes apart here if I wanted it to. And it literally just sticks on the end. It happened to be just the right size, which I was kind of happy about. There's an old cast iron pan I was going to try to fix, but it's too far gone. Because it's junk. It was junk when it was new, it's junk now. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this to probably about 4 or 5 feet. I think I'm going to go for about 4 feet. And I'll make the whole thing about 12 feet long. Plus it's about 5 feet off the ground, which will make it about 17 feet tall, which is more than enough for what I'm going to do. So I'm going to get that cut, and I'm just going to use an angle grinder because I have one to cut that down. You can use pretty much anything. And the nice thing about this is that those eyelets cost a couple dollars. That piece of conduit costs $3 or $4, and the fishing pole here cost $1. So very cheap antenna pole there. Alright, so I'll get that cut and I'll show you the next part. Here's my awful workbench. Here's my angle grinder, and this looks about right. These are like an amazing $20. Alright, let's go see what this looks like. In case anybody was wondering, yes, I was totally wearing safety glasses. Alright, so I've got the antenna pole stuck there on my fence post, and it's probably about 15 feet tall. I'm guessing. It doesn't really matter how tall it is. I don't really care. The whole point is just to get it off the ground and further away from that, fixing it to something further away from that. So got to get a zip tie through the top there to hold the wire, and start stringing some wire through it. Okay, I'm not sure how the video is going to turn out because the sun's getting lower and lower, even though it's only about 4 o'clock as I film this. But you can see the antenna mast here, and this is on the other side of that fence. And I'm using some slightly larger conduit. I think that's probably 3/4 inch, because the 1/2 inch it fit inside of it just barely, but it was because it fit inside of the fishing pole, because the fishing pole was broken. So I cut off the broken part, and then it was actually the same size. So I used 3/4 inch, and then I put the 1/2 inch inside of it using some electrical tape as to wrap around it as a spacer, so that it would fit inside the eyelets. If this works, I'm just going to replace the eyelets with slightly larger ones, and so I don't have to have that added complexity. However, the 3/4 inch is stronger, so that's better. So let's take a look at what we've got going on here. So I've got that line coming all the way down to here, at which point I've just got it tied to some fishing line, and then that's going to a little peg I made from a bit of leftover welding rod, which you can't even see. So from a distance, hopefully it's not too noticeable. So we'll see. I can hardly see it, at least on the video. So right now I've got to lash up the rest of the antenna. Alright, it has taken me about 20 minutes to get it all lashed up and right together. But you can see in the middle here, right there, we've got the, I'm going to say 15-foot pole. And then we've got the 33-foot jack height pole. And really that's the difference between $10 and about $80. That jack height pole, I'll link to it below, but what can I say? It's amazing. I wish I had 3 of them. But I try to be modest with my ham radio spending. I'll put a link below it. It is an Amazon affiliate link. If that bothers you, then just go to Amazon and search for jack height pole, jack height kite pole specifically. But anyway, and then that goes over here to the other pole, which is what $10 on eBay gets you. Actually, I've combined a couple of those, I think. At least I had at one point. Anyway, that's what about $10 on eBay will get you, which is pretty good. And a little bit of leftover stuff from around the house. So the next thing I've got to do is I'm going to connect my antenna analyzer to my tuner and get it tuned up for JS8 on 40 meters. So to do this, what I'm going to first try to do, prop this up here, is get a half decent tune just with inductors. Got the capacitor about in the middle of its travel here. It goes from there to there, and the antenna wire is here, counterpoise is here. Right now all the inductors are currently on. I'm going to turn them off, and you can see the SWR is fairly high. I'm just going to turn them on until I can get something resembling low, which I'm not getting at all. Give this a wiggle. So it's a bit of trial and error. And it doesn't seem like anything's working. I think there might be a problem. Okay, I had to put it back up where I normally do. It did not like the metal chair that I had it sitting on. I forget that it does that. Anyway, I got it down to, well, it was a 1.1 to 1, but I have to just try to do this one-handed here. But you can see it's got a nice little SWR curve there. It increases as the frequency deviates from about 7.1 megahertz. And just had to find the right combination on the inductors and whatnot. The main thing is that the reactance is now 0. That's really the main deal. Resistance is about 39 ohms, but the reactance is 0, and that's how I know I've tuned out the reactance from the antenna and made a resonant circuit out of a long wire, an inductor, and a capacitor. Anyway, that's the whole idea with the these tuners, you'll see it's quite dirty. This lives outside. Doesn't get rained on though, thankfully. Anyway, so I hope that this was informative to you and kind of gives you some ideas of what you can do for your own antenna setup. So I'm going to go turn on JS8Call and we'll see how that goes. All right, so now we're back in the shack. And, you know, what's interesting here is that when I came back in the shack and I tried doing just a tune here with JS8Call, the problem was that the SWR was probably closer to 3 than it was to 1. So I went back out there and hooked it up, and sure enough, the SWR was actually higher when I went out there and measured it. And I started flipping switches, and the first switch I flipped, it went down to 1.1 to 1. So when I moved it at some point, I must have bumped it when I was moving it around. Anyway, so now I'm putting out 10 watts on JS8Call. And one of the neat things with JS8Call is you can put out a heartbeat. And if you've ever used Whisper, it's kind of like transmitting with Whisper, but instead of 2 minutes, this is, and you know, less than a watt, this is, you know, about 30 seconds at, and I've got it tuned here. I've got the meter set here for 10 watts, and I've got an MFJ 949E that I use here in the shack. And the radio is my Kenwood TS140S because all my homebrew type stuff is broken right now. But that's another story. In fact, you can read about that story on my blog, mast.geek.com, with the BitX40 teardown and some plans for rebuilding it. Anyway, let's do a heartbeat and see who can hear us. And that's the whole idea with heartbeats, is you get an acknowledgement. In fact, you can see some acknowledgements here. So VE3BVC has responded to WK9M and with a heartbeat, and they said your SNR is plus 0.5. And K0FBS responded to WK9M with the same transmission. They responded at the same time. His response was minus 22 dB. So let's do one manual heartbeat here. One ping only, please. And if you're unfamiliar with JS8Call, I highly recommend trying it out. It's kind of like FT8 with conversation. In fact, if your rig is already set up with FT8, then you don't need to do anything except install JS8Call and go up 4 kilohertz. And you can see I've got my speed set to slow, JS8 slow. So that's basically more bang for the buck. You get the same amount of information transmitted in a lower bandwidth over a longer time, which gives you a better propagation, essentially. Better SNR. All right, so I got several replies. One from, actually quite a few. N6GRG, W7SUA, N6MIA, N1CL, N0GQ, KE0IA, and WK9M. So let's take a look at PSK reporter. And since I've only been online for a few minutes, oh yeah, that's real nice. Of course, we're at gray line right now, and so I apologize for the poor quality. Let me increase that. There we go. I'm using a remote control program. Even though this computer is next to me at the bench, I only have one monitor. I don't have a monitor on it, so I just remote into it. In case you're wondering what software I'm using, this is called Zoho Assist. It is not free software. I also use it to do remote support for people. So I'm getting reports from all over the US. We can zoom out and see if I'm getting anywhere else. It doesn't look like it. So, but this means that this antenna is indeed working. That's the main thing. We'll check it out and see how it goes over time. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, and I hope you have a great day, evening, or whatever it is. Stay safe, and try JS8, by the way. And you can also go to my website, mast.geek.com, learn how to build that tuner, and also find out some of the various antenna experiments we've tried. I've tried. I say we because it's a website, but I guess I'm counting the website as a person. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, and if you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you've gotten this far, gosh, hit subscribe, hit like the video, so that others can get a chance to see it too. 73, and take care.